All right, so today we're going to be diving into getting your ex back.
Okay.
We're looking at this podcast, and it's called Get Your Ex Back. Now,
Mm.
I've got to say, this title I find very interesting.
Yeah.
The idea that you can just get someone back.
Yeah, it's a very bold claim.
Yeah, like a quick fix for heartbreak.
Right, because relationships are so nuanced and complicated and messy. There's rarely just one answer for everything.
For sure, and this podcast jumps right into it with these two big mistakes that are going to doom your chances to get back with this person.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what are these big mistakes that people are making?
Well, the first one is, and this is something that I think is really important, is they talk about not understanding why the relationship ended in the first place.
Okay.
Like really taking a step back from the situation.
So no more blaming the other person.
Exactly. Yeah, like really looking at your role in it. Because I think so often we want to blame the other person.
Right.
But it really does take two to tango.
It does.
And so if you're not taking the time to look at yourself and how you contributed to the issues in the relationship, then you're just going to end up, if you do manage to smooth things over without actually addressing anything,
Right.
you're just going to keep repeating those same patterns.
Totally. So self-awareness is key here.
Absolutely.
What about the second mistake?
This one is really relatable. It's trying to get back with this person without actually changing.
Okay.
And we're not talking superficial changes here,
Okay.
like a new haircut or, remembering to take the trash out.
Right.
This podcast really emphasizes that lasting change has to come from within. It's about looking at the root cause of what went wrong in your relationship
Totally.
and being willing to address those things.
So if you were always working and missing date night,
Yes,
you can't just all of a sudden be romantic and expect it to be okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about identifying those patterns and figuring out, okay, what do I need to do differently to be a better partner?
Right.
And this is where it gets interesting because they say that a lot of times men get dumped because they're showing weakness, neediness, or insecurity.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting language.
Yeah, and I think it kind of plays into these more traditional ideas of masculinity.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm not so sure that, being strong and confident
Right.
is always the answer.
Totally. And it makes you wonder, is it really about being a better partner? Or is it about conforming to this, very specific mold
Exact.
of what they think that you should be?
Yeah, that's something to think about.
For sure. And they talk about this thing called the no contact rule,
Yes.
which I've heard about, and it's always a little terrifying to me
I can imagine.
because, if you're trying to get back with someone, why would you not talk to them?
Right.
That seems so counterintuitive.
So the no contact rule, the way they describe it, is basically cutting off all contact
Okay.
with your ex.
Like all contact.
Yeah, for a set period of time.
Wow.
No calls, no texts, no social media.
Really?
Yeah,
That's intense.
it is.
So how are you supposed to rekindle a flame if you're completely off the grid?
That's a good question. And, a lot of people would say that that's not the way to go. But they argue that this isn't about playing games.
Okay.
It's not about trying to make your ex miss you. It's more about giving yourself and your ex time and space to heal
Okay.
and potentially grow.
So it's more about self-reflection than anything else.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important distinction.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times when we hear no contact, we think, oh, I'm supposed to make them miss me.
Right. Like a manipulation tactic?
Yeah, exactly. And it shouldn't be about that at all.
Okay.
It should be about taking that time to look at yourself and figure out what you want and what you need.
Right. So instead of trying to get your ex back, it's more about focusing on yourself.
Exactly. And they say that that's actually what will make you more attractive to your ex in the long run.
Okay. Interesting. So what are you supposed to be doing during this no contact period?
So they actually have some suggestions.
Okay.
They really emphasize self-improvement.
Okay.
And again, not the superficial stuff,
Right.
but like genuine personal growth.
Okay.
So they talk about using this time to reconnect with friends, to explore new hobbies,
Yeah.
maybe even dive into your work.
Okay.
Like really just focusing on becoming the best version of yourself.
Right. So you're not even really thinking about your ex during this time.
Exactly.
So you're saying instead of sitting around moping, you should be using this time to better yourself.
Exactly. It's all about that self-improvement, right?
Okay.
And they really hammer home this point that it's not just about surface level changes.
Right.
It's about really looking at yourself and figuring out, okay, what needs to change here?
So it's not just about getting a new haircut and hoping for the best?
Right. Exactly. It's deeper than that.
Okay, so you've gone through this no contact period. You've worked on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
What's next? Do they actually tell you how to, like, reconnect with your ex?
They do, but they emphasize that there's no magic formula here.
Right.
Every relationship is different, and you have to kind of figure out what works for your specific situation.
So no cheesy pickup lines or grand gestures.
No, probably not a good idea.
Okay. But eventually you're going to have to talk to them, right?
Right. And they do give some advice on how to do that.
Okay, I'm listening.
They suggest starting with a casual conversation.
Okay.
Maybe asking how they're doing, showing genuine interest in their life.
So you're not just bombarding them with, I miss yous and pleased to get back together.
Right, exactly. It's about rebuilding that connection slowly and authentically.
Okay, so what about actually talking about the relationship? Do they get into that?
They do, but they caution against coming on too strong.
So no, like, let's dissect every single thing that went wrong.
No, it's more about acknowledging that there were issues and that you've used this time apart to work on yourself and hopefully address some of those things.
So it's more about showing that you've changed than just saying it.
Exactly. Actions speak louder than words.
Right.
And they also emphasize the importance of listening.
Okay.
Like really listening to what your ex has to say.
So it's a two-way street.
Absolutely. It's not just about you and what you want.
Right. It takes two to tango, after all.
Exactly.
So let's say you do all of this. You go through the no contact. You work on yourself. You reconnect with your ex. Is there any guarantee that they're going to want to get back together?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And unfortunately, there's no easy answer.
Because as much as we want to control the situation,
Right.
sometimes it's just out of our hands.
Exactly. And I think that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people.
It's got to be, especially when you've put in all this effort.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think that's where the whole personal growth piece comes in again.
Okay.
Even if you do all the right things and your ex doesn't come back,
Right.
you haven't failed.
Okay.
You've still learned and grown from the experience.
So it's not a waste of time even if you don't end up back together.
Exactly. You've become a better version of yourself.
Yeah. You don't want to come off as like, I've been working so hard on myself.
Right. It's not about bragging.
Okay.
It's more about just kind of demonstrating that you've changed.
Like subtly.
Subtly, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so it sounds like a lot of this comes down to communication.
Yeah. A huge part of it is communication.
Are there any other communication tips that they give in the podcast?
They talk about the importance of active listening.
Okay.
So when your ex is talking to you, really listening to what they have to say.
Okay, so it's not just about you getting your chance to speak.
Exactly. It's about showing them that you're hearing them.
Okay.
That you're trying to understand their perspective.
Right, and that you've actually reflected on the things that they said.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that you're coming to the table with a new perspective.
Okay, so you've done all of this. You've listened to the podcast. You've gone through the no contact. You've worked on yourself.
Yeah.
You've reconnected with your ex. But they still don't want to get back together. Is that a possibility? Like, is there a chance that you do all of this and it still doesn't work out?
Absolutely, and I think that's something that's really important to remember.
Okay.
Because as much as we want to control the situation,
right,
we can't control other people.
Right.
And sometimes you can do everything right.
Yeah.
And it's still not going to be enough.
That's got to be tough.
It is tough. And I think that's where, that self-awareness piece comes in again.
Okay.
Where even if it doesn't work out, you've still gained something from the experience.
You've learned something about yourself.
Exactly.
Okay. So for our listeners out there who are maybe going through a breakup right now.
Yeah.
What's like the key takeaway that you want them to remember from this whole conversation?
This podcast gives very specific advice on how to get your ex back. But I think there's a bigger message here.
Okay.
And that is that whether or not you get back together with your ex, focusing on your own growth and happiness is never a bad idea.
That's a great takeaway.
Right.
So before you even try to get your ex back,
yes,
maybe just take some time to figure out who you are.
Exactly. Like, what do you want? What makes you happy?
What are your goals?
Yeah. What kind of partner do you want to be?
Yeah.
Not even just for your ex, but for yourself.
Those are great questions to ask.
Right.
Awesome. Well, that was the deep dive on getting your ex back.
Yes.
We learned about the no contact rule.
That's right.
The 2 big mistakes you should avoid. And most importantly, we learned that focusing on yourself is never a bad thing.
Exactly.
All right, folks, until next time.
See you later.